Hi everyone, welcome to another online presentation from me, Steve D'Alessandro here in Marketing 563, Big Data and Marketing Analytics. Now today I'm going to run through the Insight Maker simulation interface. Now hopefully by now you've set up an account and gone through the steps. Now those steps I've listed in lecture 10. So what I'm going to quickly go through here today is how you first might create a simple model which encapsulates some of the important foundations of simulation. So my advice is firstly read lecture 10 and then have a look at this video. I'll also be doing a similar approach when I run my online meeting on May the 5th. The first thing to do is to just click on this, click me to clear demo, and this just shows you some of the information about how you might go about building a model in Insight Maker. I've just logged into the default here, and also there is a video over here which you can watch which shows the introduction to using this software. Okay, so the first thing is to click on this link here to remove it. Now we're going to create a very simple model, and the model will end up looking something like this on my screen, which is the simple BAS model, which is where we have a rate of adoption, some users, an adoption, determined by a rate, which we can set over here on our slider, and what we might call just a button to make the whole thing go. All right. So that this first variable here is called a stock. So a stock represents, as it sounds, a quantity of something, be they users, a market, companies, or so on. As you saw in the lecture, you can have what we call agents, which might represent special populations of people with different behavioural rules. We won't do that in this subject, but just to let you know, there are two types of models. Okay, so the first thing we need to do is create the stock variable, which is the number of users. So you simply go to add primitive over here. So it's a graphical model, so there's no programming involved in this, and you simply click on add stock. Okay, this stock variable, we're going to call it users, so we can either double click on here or over here, and we'll just call this users. Okay, so that's the stock variable there. This interface is an online interface, so you can use it from anywhere online. You don't need to download software or anything like that. You just need to set up a free account. Okay, the next step is to add a flow variable, and the way we do that is we simply select the middle of this variable, the users variable, and just drag this line up like that. Okay. Okay, now you will remember in this model, if we just flick back another page, we've actually got the line going into the number of users. So all we've got to do here is reverse the line, and we simply click on reverse connection direction. Now we'll need to give this a name, so we'll call this adoption. Okay. The other thing we'll need to set is just the number of users, okay, in our model. So at the moment we've just set it at an initial value of 0. What we'll just do just for demonstration purposes, we'll set it to 1,000. Okay, so there are 1,000 people in our model. Why do we set this? Well, we might want to look at small marketplaces, large marketplaces, and so on. So there are various different simulation values. So we've got an adoption which affects number of users, but we haven't really configured the adoption rate. So now what we're going to do is add what we call a variable. And the variables are these yellow buttons here on my completed model. You can see my completed model, by the way, from the group that you will submit your assignments to, which we set up. Okay, so to do this, again, we add another primitive, which we call a variable, and it gives us this yellow variable here. And we're just going to name this variable rate. Okay, so that's the rate of adoption. Now we're going to, this variable obviously affects, this variable affects the adoption rate. Okay, so we just need to draw a line by selecting on links and then just highlight that button there and draw that line into adoption like that. So what we're saying is the rate affects adoption. Okay, what is our rate? Well, you notice that we can set it to a number of factors, but we're going to create what we call a slider, which is a variable measure. And so we're going to say that our maximum rate is 1, our minimum is 0, and our step is 0.1. Now we could give this an absolute measure. Okay, and if I said, I want to say show slider value, yes, okay. And so what this now does is I've got what's called a slider that I can drag across here to simulate the various aspects of our innovation, acceptance of innovation, okay. If we wanted to make that a little bit more finer, we could say, oh, why don't we make it 0.01? Okay, so this would create a much more sensitive measure there. Okay, now we need to save our work, and I'm just going to go through this step now. Okay, so saving, just give it a name, BAS model, very simple, demo. And you might tag it, so if this was your assignment, similar, so it's in marketing. Okay, we want to create this public so other people can view it, and then you want to share this with your group. So this is how you'll do your assignment, by the way. And we'll click on save. Now, the beauty of doing this is from now on it will save as you go. So let's have a look and see if the simulation has worked. So the way we do that is just run simulate here, and it should produce a little graph of what should look something like a BAS curve. Okay, then we've got it there. Whoops, sorry about that. Okay, so we might want to add a bit more to our display. At the moment, we've just got users. What we might want to add to we might want to just go back and just edit what we've got here. So one thing we might do, okay, so that looks all right, play by then. What we might do under the simulation is just to add, just if we click on this configure button, we might also want to include adoption in there, okay? Right, so this will give us a graph with a bit more information in it. Oh, because we've got the rate set at 0, let's move the rate, let's move the rate up and run the simulation again. Okay, not a lot happening there. Oh, what's gone wrong is we haven't put in, my apologies, we haven't put in the adoption rate, what actually affects the rate. At the moment our rate is 0. So what we've got to do is come up with a calculation, and of course the rate of adoption, the number of users, is simply the rate times the number of present users. So we just need to alter this equation here. So we click on this down arrow, I'll just drag it over here, and what we're going to do is add a very simple equation, which is it's the number of users star times the rate, click apply. Okay, and you'll notice as I'm going that it's saving as I'm doing now once I've set up the initial save. So if you have a power outage or the cat jump falls over your power cord, shouldn't be a problem because it's saving as it goes. Now let's have a look at our model and see if it's behaving like a classic diffusion innovation curve. And you can see, yes indeed it does. The green line here of course are the number of users. And you can see it starts off slow, then it accelerates. It's what we call a geometric progression. And this is the adoption rate, and that's the rate overall, which stays of course the same. Now we can also add a button in this just to, I guess, find it easier. at the moment we're asking the user to go up here and look for the button. To add another primitive, like a button, you've got a whole range of interactive buttons you can add in this. We simply again click on Add Interactive Button. Drag it over here. Now to format this button, I'll just hopefully drag it. There we go. Okay. Now to format this button, you hold down the Shift key, select, and it should bring up this menu over here, which you can just see. Now I'm just going to call this button Simulate Me. Be very careful how you say this, otherwise it could be defamatory. And the action is, if we click on just a Shift Control on the one I've already created, is simply this command here, run model close brackets semicolon brackets. Okay, so if we just delete and type that in, so that's run model, one word, open brackets, close brackets, semicolon. Okay, so now we can actually test to see if this will run the model, and you can see indeed it does. Well, I hope you enjoyed the first kind of model that we've created. Some of the important things to know in this model, this is what we call a stock measure, this is a variable, and this is what we call a flow measure. And of course this is a button. We can, of course, alter some of these measures, so we could alter the initial values of this to make this a slider. So the way we could do that is to say show slider value here, and then just select that. At the moment I've just set it as 1000. Now there are some more complex BAS models which you can look at. The way you might find models that you might want to use in class, because you can clone them and then you can import them to where you're working or actually edit them, is if we just get out of this, sorry, we'll just close this off here. Okay, so we've saved our model, so we can just close that off, right? And we simply just, what we'll do here is just simply find, sorry, just go back to, what we'll do is we'll just go back to Insight Maker. Sorry about this. Whoops, everything's just sort of in the way here. I'm just going to move the screen down a bit. Okay. Okay. Okay, so this brings us back here. Under here, it's over right here. You won't be able to see it. I was going to move my menu up a bit. There's a little thing called Find More Insights. Okay, it's usually on the top right hand corner. And what we could do is we could type in things like BAS model, or we could type in something like marketing. Let's put in a BAS model and have a look and see if we can find a more complicated, or sorry, more interesting model than we have. Here's a diffusion of innovation model here, which I've actually put up on the group, on the share group. Okay. It's just loading. Right, so here we have, this is a more complicated model than, I'll just move my face down here, than what we have here. We have potential adopters, then we have advertising in here, advertising effectiveness, adoption from advertising, which also affects that. The adoption rate is affected by, as you can see here, the rate by word of mouth and advertising. Word of mouth comes from fraction per contact, contact rate, probability of contacting a potential adopter, which is sort of a positive feedback loop down here. So if we run this simulation, okay, whereas pretty quickly, you can see that it looks at the crossover between potential adopters and adopters. So there are many kinds of models that you can see that we can evaluate here or develop here. And the reason we do simulations is we don't always have all this data. So we're trying to work out the patterns and the explanation before we go out to the marketplace. So I hope you enjoyed your first simulation. And again, don't be worried, I've put up all these notes on Interact.